Thank you very much for coming to today's presentation. It will be a continuation of the previous one that I had on the need to change the way that we are being governed, the nature of democracy. We discussed a little bit the concept of consensual democracy, but today we are expanding into a related territory of consensual debating for consensual democracy. I'm going to link to that presentation, but only focus on how we can do so-called consensual debating. And this presentation is based on the website that has been specifically created to support the Conference for the Future of Europe. So I would start with the premise saying that we cannot reform democracy without resetting the relationships between the governed and the governing. In most countries, we have representational democracy. So it starts with the ballot box, which means that this is the only point in time when we are able to control or take politicians to account. Once they have been elected, especially in the first past the post electoral systems, what happens is that they very often make it a lifetime career. So how can you remedy that? Well, I would refer you back to direct democracy, but not to Switzerland, because it wouldn't help. It is not a solution, although the name is the same, because Swiss direct democracy is based on referendum. Actually, on average, there are 3 or 4 referenda a year, which means that everybody, that's why the name direct is appropriate, participates in making a decision on a given policy. However, that system is prone to corruption or to abuse, as in the representational democracy, because you can influence the voters in a very similar way. So Swiss may think that they are better than the representational democracy. I'm not quite sure. So what I'm proposing is to go back 2,500 years to literally Athenian democracy, but using the latest technology, which now re-enables it, because for large countries, it would be feasible at all. Today, it is. And take the system that was used in ancient Athens 2,500 years ago, which is a kind of a jury system, that the representatives or delegates of the citizens are elected randomly, like for a jury service. So what is the advantage of it? That you don't allow everybody to directly participate. You elect the randomly selected individuals to represent you, but they are not party members, and they only would serve one parliamentary term. There's a whole chapter in my book, Democracy on Human Federation, how to elect those delegates. It's a complex process in order to do it properly. But if you do that, what we can create is a second chamber, which is called citizen chamber. And believe it or not, that's what has been proposed for Scotland. It's not yet on the statute book, but that has been seriously proposed in Scotland. But this is the beginning of the road, because if we really want to reset the relationship between the governed and the governing, we need a new, I call it consensual democracy. What it means is that the two chambers coexist. Each of those chambers have different roles. The first one proposes and sets up the laws, and the citizen chamber monitors the whole process over the whole period of the parliament and co-legislates. So that's the key difference. Have you any questions so far? Is it clear? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But consensual democracy requires consensual debating, because that's what consensus actually means. And that debating has to be done at two levels. One is the enabling at a national level, but in such a way that is very fast. And the second one, which is doable right now, as we speak, it can be done within a week in any parliament to fast track any legislation at the committee stages, because that's where it takes ages. And I'll show you how it can be done. This is a question, can we do that? We have a kind of a debating and at the national level every time an opinion poll is carried out, especially during the election time or just before the election. However, what has happened is that more and more often the polls are wrong, like in US election 2016. The question is why? Because the polls themselves prime the voters how to vote or how not to vote, or perhaps stop people going voting because people think, oh, it's all done, like it was with Brexit. Most people thought, well, I wouldn't go voting for staying in Europe because the polls predicted a win for the Remain, and they didn't go voting, and that's why we had Brexit. So that's what it says, that the polls themselves impact the result. The second thing is that the polls are usually using the agree-disagree survey types, like it was again in Brexit, and what it creates, it fossilizes the divide between the winners and the losers, because there is no room for compromise. They only ask a question, are you for or against, and nothing in the middle. So I believe we cannot reform democracy without changing politics from adversarial to consensual. For the last 30 years or so, there have been focus groups before elections where TV stations gather, say, 20, 50 people in a room and try to seek some kind of consensus against the motion that is being set up. And the starting point is that you've got a whiteboard with a number of stickers representing the individual participants, and they start engaging in conversation, and after a while, at the end, they group into some kind of consensus. So what's wrong with that? That's a progress, because you suddenly get a room for maneuver for a consensual discussion. People are not voting just for Brexit or for Remain, but perhaps for middle of the road, like staying in the single market or in the customs union, which was not possible in the referendum. But the problem with this approach is that the one that forms the question may bias the outcome. And the second thing is that it's only limited to tens of people. This is no good for a national debate. So what next? Fortunately, in 2012, in America, there were guys who developed a system called POLIS, which is obviously a reference to the Greek name polis, cities. That system, which is AI-based, can support focus-style consensual debates for thousands, even millions of people in a very fast way. It has the same objectives as the focus groups. The participants debate indirectly, trying to find 60 majority by compromise. They can, of course, engage thousands, as I said, or millions of people, and they are used in Canada, USA, Australia, New Zealand, Taiwan, and UK as well. But how can, you may ask, debate thousands of ideas with tens of thousands of participants? That's the dilemma that the European Union has actually been faced with. This European Union conference, which opened on the 9th of May, on the 15th of May, it had 6 days after, it already had 12,500 participants, and 3,000 ideas. That's in 6 days. On the 19th, there were already over 1,000 participants more and 500 more ideas. On the topic of democracy that we are discussing, this is one of the 10 topics, there were 744 participants and 500 ideas. So POLIS cannot handle it on its own. So what's the solution? There is a solution, and it's called consensual debating, developed to facilitate complex political debates, political problems. As I mentioned, POLIS is inadequate for complex debates because it doesn't have a broader context. For instance, if you want to debate a new constitution, you have a plethora of different subjects that if you discuss one, you need to see at least the overview of all of them. And POLIS doesn't satisfy that. In 2015, Sustensis developed what I call structured content-enabled debating, initially applied to discuss complex social or technological problems. And because of the conference, it was combined with the POLIS approach as consensual debating. So we set up a Agora website, especially to support the conference. So how does it work? So you go to register yourself, but how does it work in practice? It's using AI technology, but it's also using the most advanced statistics. I would compare the consensual debating to a book. In a book, we have table of contents, so we have chapters. Likewise, on your Agora site, what you have is the top-level tabs are like chapters in the book, and they are set up in a logical order, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Additionally, the further you go, you will get some more detailed explanations to the main problem. You also have on each of those chapters or tabs, you have subtabs called info and POLIS. The info subtabs is about values and responsibilities, and the POLIS subtypes is about voting on given motion statements. You can have up to 10 statements for a particular topic. Moreover, the participants can also add their own statements. So the current debate is on the European democracy within the conference on the future of Europe. For those who are already on the European Union digital platform, that's not a problem. They can go straight and register on the Agora website. Others who are not there are recommended to log on to your European website, because there will be a transfer of data between the Agora website and the digital platform, so that those who do not participate in the Agora website debates can also see the partial results once a month or once a week. So let me give you a real-life example. I've chosen a topic called topic number 33, politicians' power must be balanced by citizens' chamber. So what we have this topic 33 is within the Consensual Democracy. The number of the topics, the 2-digit numbers, the first number indicates the top level. So it means that it is in the Consensual Democracy. And we would first go into the info tab, where we will find information on Consensual Democracy and specifically on this topic. Once we've done that, we click on subtab 33 and we would start debating. So debating is about voting and adding your own statements. Otherwise, it would be just a voting system, but it is a debating system. What it means is that you can initially vote on the statement, like here, you agree, disagree, or if you're unsure, you click here. This is an explanation what you should do if you want to add your own statement, which should be 140 character long at most, and should be a standalone idea. If you don't have an idea of your own, or you don't know what to say, there's always a hope, if you like, because the text above this statement, which is an extended text, and it can be even more extended if you click on the link, you can just copy a given sentence, insert it here, and once you've done that, other people will see it here as an invitation to vote, and they will express their opinion. So what will happen as a result, that as users vote on the statements, they are grouped together. That's what the AI system does, and the statistics. When it groups people, not necessarily just voting on the initial statement, but also on the statements that other users have proposed, or he has proposed. So they may not be exactly the same. It's just the core of the statement. It's the meaning of the statement, although the system doesn't understand it, don't take me wrong. But anyway, it can guess the meaning of a statement and knows that it is in a group B. Like here, we got 7 votes for this one, for C, 6 for A, and so on. After a while, since the users make their own statements or challenge the initial statement, their position moves. So if you have here, say, 3 groups, here we have 2 groups. After a while, that is the final position. So how POLIS generates the results? Well, there's the original statement. This is the one that we are focusing on. And POLIS produces a report which groups people according to their preferential statements. And these are the statements, as you can see, the original statement was just 1. And here we have 10 statements. And they are not exactly the same. They are slightly different, but the meaning of those sentences is close to affirming the initial statement. And in some statements are 100% in alignment, some less, but they are all over 60%, because that's the principle behind POLIS. And then you can have another group B, which is not agreeing with the initial statements, although some of that's individual statements may be exactly the same. Like here, 11 is here and here, although the support is different. This is 100%, and this one is 80%. So you can see that the minority voices or preferences are also heard and recorded in the majority view. So what you have the grouping of the voting people, the participants, indicating which group is the biggest one. And it works on an x-axis from the maximum consensus to the minimum consensus. Here is the middle of the debate. And the final thing is that the system also looks at how divisive the conversation was. And the divisiveness is shown by how many statements or participants are grouped at both ends of the voting. Here we can see it's not very divisive. Most people have grouped in the center. If you click on any of these dots, you'll be able to see what kind of statements the people voted for that appeared here. And finally, the system also has a summary of a majority view. So these are like the policies that can go straight into the final documents, for if it had been a constitution, you could have some articles of the constitution here, or the heading of the articles. So this is extremely powerful and extremely fast. You can do the first round within a day. And if it is a parliamentary committee, you can imagine how much faster it would be. So, any questions? Because now I'm going to the website to show you some examples how it works.